Hello and welcome. My name's Jo. I'm a full-time artist based on a narrow boat in Wales. I mostly make creepy cute cloth art dolls, and today I'm answering your questions about doll making. I put up a post a couple of weeks ago asking for your questions. So I've got a few good questions to get through, and there's one that I won't be answering. We'll come back to that later. I'll put usernames up on the screen somewhere, and there will be timestamps in the description, so if there's a specific answer you're looking for, you'll know where to find it. So the first question we have is, how do you measure the hairline for your dolls? Do you just eyeball it, or have you measured or marked the heads in the past and got the hang of it after so many dolls? Personally, I feel like I either overdo it or underdo it, and it never looks right. Yeah, I think this is something that everybody kind of struggles with when they first start doll making. It can be difficult to judge exactly where the hairline needs to be. When I first started out, I did mark the hairline with a pencil. I just put a pencil line all the way around where I felt like the hair needed to go and then try and work to that. And that worked quite well. I never measured it as such, but what I did used to do is just mark the seam at each side of the head with a pin. I figured that if the hairline crosses the seam at each side in the same place, then it's going to be roughly symmetrical. So I put a pin in one side and then tried to get it kind of level with the pin at the other side, and then mark a pencil line across where the pins are. And I found that worked quite well. You can use a mirror or turn the doll upside down to check for symmetry as well. If you're still not sure whether you're getting it symmetrical or if it's too low or too high, firstly, do the face first, because I've found in the past that if I've done the hair first, then there's not been enough room left for the face and it's kind of looked a bit odd. So if you get the face on first, then it's easier to judge where the hairline needs to be. If you do the hairline kind of higher than you think you're going to need it first, then you can always felt a little bit more and bring it down a bit. I think it's easier to bring the hair forwards and bring the hairline down than it is to take it back up. You can always add more hair, but it's more difficult to actually remove it without leaving marks. So do it a little bit higher than you need it to be. Mark it with a pencil line to make sure it's symmetrical, and keep checking your work in a mirror, because that gives you kind of a fresh perspective, and hopefully that will work for you. So the next question we have is, I'd like to know how to make clothing patterns for cloth dolls. So would I. I think I've mentioned in a video before that doll clothing is not my strong point. I tend to make fixed clothing for my dolls, so it's more like doing upholstery. I use the draping method, which it's more like kind of upholstering onto a doll rather than making actual clothes. I don't tend to use patterns. I just tend to fit the fabric onto the doll where I think it needs to go and work from there and kind of stitch it in place so it's permanently fixed to the doll rather than clothing that can be taken on and off. There are people who make absolutely amazing doll clothing, like Dolliteful. She makes some fantastic stuff. I have tried, and it's something that I'm kind of gradually working on, and if I do figure it out, I'll make a video about it. The clothes on my dolls, where they are fitted to the doll, like the bodices, I tend to make little darts in the side so they fit to the shape of the waist. So where I want to fit it to the shape of the doll, I'll use the template for the doll's body and actually lay that onto the fabric and mark out the shape of the doll, and then I can kind of figure out where I need to sew darts and where to shape it from there. But other than that, yeah, that's not something I'm very good at, and I'm not ashamed to say that. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, and that, I think, patterns and doll clothing is somewhere where I have a weakness, and that is something I still need to work on. So maybe we'll figure it out together. By the way, if you can hear some strange creaking and knocking noises in the background, it's a little bit windy here today and the boat is moving around a little bit, so The ropes are making some really strange noises, so apologies if you can hear that. I'm not sure if my microphone's picking it up. And now we've got a helicopter flying over, and I don't know if my microphone's picking that up. The trouble with living on a narrowboat is there is absolutely no soundproofing, so every sound that's outside just seems to be magnified or amplified. Okay, so the next question we have is, what kind of fabrics do you use to make cloth dolls? It depends really on what kind of doll you're making. Some people will make sculpted dolls they'll put stitches in to kind of sculpt the faces, and for that kind of doll you'd want to use a stretch jersey fabric. For the dolls I make, they don't need to be sculpted, they're just stiff stuffed, they're sewn flat and stiff stuffed. So I use quilting cottons or cotton sheeting. Cheap 100% cotton sheeting can be really good for basic doll making. If you're not too worried about the colour, you can get some basic whites, greys, and those fabrics can be really good, especially just for practicing with. If you're looking for a specific skin tone, then quilting cotton. I really like Moda Bella solids. They have such a great range of colours, and there's hundreds of different skin tones to choose from. Some people use Kona cotton. They have a good range of colours as well. I personally didn't get on with Kona cotton, as I found it's stretched and frayed a little bit too much. It depends on the doll you're making. Some people find that works better for them. I find Moda Bella works better for me. For patterns and things like doll dresses and for the arms and legs, look for patterns that are as tiny as possible. Sometimes you can find what looks like a really nice print, only to try and use it on a doll and you can't even see the print because the pieces you're cutting are far too small and the pattern's too big. So tiny little patterns, little polka dots and stripes or tiny little floral prints, as small as you can get them, are going to work well for a doll. I tend to buy fat quarters, and I've had people questioning me in the past saying, oh, why do you use fat quarters? That's such an expensive way to do it. But if you're making small dolls, you use such a tiny amount that if you buy a whole meter of fabric, you're never going to use it, and you're just storing reams and reams of fabric everywhere when there's no need. I like to have just small amounts, just little fat quarters of fabric that I can use tiny amounts of whenever I need it. I've got fat quarters that I bought years ago that I'm still using. You really do use such small amounts for dolls. You can often find little scraps in charity shops, or I think you call them thrift shops in America. They'll have like a bargain basket of little offcuts of fabric, and you can find some really nice stuff in there for next to nothing sometimes. So for doll clothing, you can really get creative and use pretty much any fabric. I've recycled clothing as well for doll dresses. You can find some really nice satins, and if you like velvet, I personally cannot stand the texture of velvet, but it looks really nice. So you can find some really nice fabrics like that from recycled clothing. But for the doll body, I would stick to poplin, quilting cotton, or cotton sheeting. 100% cotton fabric is always going to give you the best results. So next question. I make knitted toys. I really enjoy the process. It seems that crocheted toys are the preference at the moment. Yeah, I've seen a lot of crochet toys around lately. Did you face any acceptance issues with your dolls? You seem to have a distinct style. I wouldn't say I've ever had that many acceptance issues. I mean, there's always going to be people who don't like it, whatever you make. I think if you make what you love and you stay true to your own style, then you're going to find your own little niche of the market, your own little group of people who will love what you do. A lot of people will go with the trend, and if crochet dolls seem to be popular, then they'll think, oh, I need to make crochet dolls. I think something that's interesting to note as well, that is that a lot of the crocheted stuff that you see on the internet at the moment isn't actually really crocheted. There's a lot out there that's AI generated, and there are a lot of fake patterns out there where if you bought the pattern expecting to be able to make the doll that's in the picture, you wouldn't be able to make it because it's not technically possible. And I'm sure that's making it a lot harder for genuine crochet artists to get their work seen, because people are comparing what is I mean, I can't crochet. Crochet is so difficult. I've tried and I've not been able to do it. So I really respect people who can make crochet dolls. And it must be so hard seeing all these fake AI images everywhere, and people who don't understand crochet are comparing your work to those. And knitted. I mean, I can knit a little bit. I have knitted in the past, but it's not something I find easy. I used to knit little dolls and animals for my kids when they were tiny, but I wouldn't say it's something that I get a lot of enjoyment from myself. I find it difficult. I struggle with it. So I've got a lot of respect for people who knit and crochet. I'd say just make what you love to make, and that's going to come through in your work, and you're going to draw people to you who love what you make. I think I always just made what I like, what I enjoy, and hoped that I'd find other people who like what I like too. I haven't had a lot of issues with acceptance. The only criticism and nasty comments I've had are from people who I don't really care about. I don't care what they think. Of course, because my style is quite gothic, of course, I get the occasional remark from people who tell me that my dolls are evil and I'm going straight to hell, and I should be making something that's like pink and fluffy with smiley faces and rosy cheeks. And yeah, no, no, sorry. Those go straight into the hidden folder, which I never look at. They just get shoved into the abyss, and sorry, no. Just make what you love and you'll find other people who love what you make too. So the next question we have is, do you have a pattern to share? Also, have you ever made larger size dolls? Can you create a full supply list for every tool and part used across the board? So there's 3 questions here. I've talked about patterns before. I don't have any immediate plans to release a pattern for a number of reasons. Firstly, the pattern that I work to is a few scraps of cardboard that I've cut out to suit myself. And I kind of know how I work with those. I don't know if I could write out full instructions that somebody else could understand for how to use that. If I do ever release a pattern, I'd like it to be something that's professional and easy to follow, something that I can be proud to put out and that I would be able to charge a fair amount for, so I can be fairly compensated for my intellectual property. It would be when it's the right decision for my business, because what I do is a business and it's my main source of income. So if I do ever put out a pattern, it'll be because I've got something that I feel is giving people value for money. At the moment, I don't feel like I can do that. I don't have the skills yet to be able to do that. I'd like to be able to produce a pattern using computer software and to be able to design something digitally and print out some really nice instructions. So that might be coming in the future. I'm still learning how to do that. And if I am able in the future to produce something that I'm proud of, that I'm proud to put out, then I'll put it out for general sale. Have you ever made larger size dolls? Yes, I used to make dolls a lot bigger than the ones I make at the moment. When I started out, my dolls were all about 15 or 16 inches tall. There's a few reasons I started making smaller dolls. Firstly, most of my sales come from overseas, and the majority of my customers have always been in the US and Australia and Canada. So I need to be able to package dolls well and send them overseas, and it not cost an absolute fortune. So to keep my dolls within the small parcel size, to be able to make them affordable to send, I needed to make them just a little bit smaller so they were easier to package. Secondly, as my dolls became more detailed, I found that the bigger dolls weren't selling as well as the smaller dolls, because the price I'd have to charge to be able to make a profit on the amount of time I put into them makes them incredibly expensive. So I'm happy to make a bigger doll for a commission. If somebody requests a bigger doll, then I'd be able to price that up and we could come to an agreement on whether it's going to be affordable for the customer or not to have it made and to have it sent out to them. Another reason that I made my dolls a lot smaller was that I have a tiny working space, so I don't have a lot of room for storage. So every doll that I make, I need to be able to store somewhere until they sell. So at the moment, I've got a box behind me there and I've got another box on a shelf over there somewhere that have dolls packed up inside them, waiting to go off to their new homes, and they don't take up too much space because they're quite small. If I'm making one as a commission, I know that they're going out to their new home as soon as they've been finished, so that makes it a bit easier. But for dolls that I'm listing on my website, if they're going to be around for a little while, then it's a lot easier to make little dolls than it is to make big dolls. The third part of the question was, can you create a full supply list for every tool and part used across the board? It's not really practical for me to create a full list, because a lot of the tools and materials that I use are, well, a lot of the tools I use are things that I've had for a very long time and things that aren't available anymore. My sewing machine I've had for about 15 years and that's not in production anymore. And I've got things that I've collected from various places over the years. A lot of the materials I use are things that I find either on eBay or in local craft shops or in charity shops. So I don't always have links for things. Where I do have a link, where things are widely available worldwide on somewhere like Amazon, I'll put links in the description on that video, but it's not really possible for me to kind of get all that together in one place. I did try at one point to make an Amazon page with recommendations for everything that I use, but I found that that was only available in the US, and then I had people from other countries trying to access it and finding that they weren't able to access it because it wasn't available in their country. So I kind of gave up on that one. I found it's easiest just to put links to the things that are available in the description in each individual video. A lot of the fibers that I use for hair, things like that, are things that I've had in for a long time and they've been discontinued since I bought them. And listings do change all the time. Sometimes something will be up on Amazon and then next week it might be taken down, or the manufacturer will swap the listing for something completely different. So I think it wouldn't really be viable to keep up with a full list, but I do what I can. So the next question, will you be making a special piece of art or doll for 5,000 subs? So at the time of recording this, I'm about 3 or 4 subs away from 5,000, which is exciting. I never thought I'd get 5 subscribers when I started out, let alone 5,000. Will I be making a special piece? I don't know. I hadn't thought about it until I got this question, so maybe I will. Maybe I'll make one larger doll, get the old larger pattern out and make a big doll as a special piece for 5,000 subs. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments. Drop me a comment and let me know that what you'd like to see for 5,000 subs. If you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget, please, to leave me a like and let me know. And you can also subscribe if you want to, so you don't miss the next one. So in addition to the questions I got on the post tab, I did get a question that came through by email. And this is an interesting one. The person seemed very genuine. They had a long list of things they were struggling with. They claimed that they were also an artist. They said that they were a young artist. And a lot of the questions all seemed to center around struggling with inspiration and being in a small space and all that kind of thing. And I had a lot of empathy for them. I spent a few days considering my response and how I was going to answer it and what help I could give them. And a few days later, I had an email from them that said something like, "Oh, by the way, I'm also a graphic designer, and I've noticed that your YouTube channel is not optimized, blah, 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 blah." And then they launched into the usual spiel. I'm used to getting those messages. You get them all the time. If you have a website or a YouTube channel, you see a lot of these emails. Your marketing or your branding is not optimized to your ideal customer. Let me help you with that. And they usually go straight in the bin. This one, when I went back and looked at the original message, I realized that what they'd done is use something like ChatGPT. They'd used AI to go through my channel and to look at the problems I address in each of my videos, and they'd taken keywords and put them all together into a very formatted AI email. And when I look back at it more carefully, all the telltale signs of it being written by AI were there. I just hadn't expected it. And I just felt insulted and cheated. I'd spent a lot of time looking at the questions and considering responses, and I actually wanted to help them. So, no. No, I'm not answering your question, and I'm not interested in graphic design services. And I would give a little bit of advice to anybody who thinks that this is a good business model. Insulting creative people and telling them that their design skills are rubbish and you can come in and save the day and design it all for them is not going to get you many customers. And if you do have a genuine question, I know what to look out for now, and I can tell if your question is AI generated. So I would say if you want to approach an artist for advice, do so genuinely, speak from the heart. I don't care if your grammar's not perfect. I don't care if your spelling's not perfect. I don't care if English isn't your first language. Right from the heart, tell me what your real problem is. Tell me what you're struggling with, what you feel about it, and we can have a conversation and I'll try and help you the best I can. I'm always happy to help other artists and to give advice wherever I can. But if you come to me with an AI generated message that's meant to look impressive, I will spot that now because I've been burned once and that's not going to happen again. I've heard of a lot of other people who have YouTube channels who've been approached by people for things like graphic design or editing services. And when somebody's got access to the back end of your YouTube channel, you're leaving yourself wide open to be scammed. I've heard of people having communication with somebody that they've trusted only to be locked out of the channel, and then the channel is used to scam other people, and it's been really difficult for them to get it back. So I'm only going to work with people who have got really good feedback from others, and I can verify that they're genuine and I know that I can trust. So if you just send me a message out of the blue trying to sell me graphic design or SEO services, that's the worst one, then you can be sure that that email is just going to be deleted. So that's it for today. I don't really want to end on a negative note. I don't like being negative. I don't really like complaining or ranting about things. I'd much rather keep it positive. So if you've got any doll making questions or art business related questions you'd like me to answer, leave them down in the comments and I'll try and get to those in the next Q&A video. If you'd like to see what questions I've answered in previous videos, I'll leave another video up here for you to watch, and I'll see you next time. Bye.